But yeah, in 2014, Mill Creek's Water Authority was purchased, by the Erie Waterworks. So it was approximately $22 million. There was $10 million up front, and then $1 million every year. For 12 years?
Yes.
For 12 years.
I was going to say 12 years.
Yeah, and so that money was, they passed a resolution after that money was coming in, saying that it was for capital projects that were transformational. So it's not a part of our fund balance necessarily. Okay. When we have any funds maybe that weren't spent at the end of the year that go back in.
Is it a sinking fund?
Pardon me?
You have it in a sinking fund now? I don't know the difference between township and third-class city on what's allowed or not, but do you know if it's a sinking fund?
It's in a separate restricted account that was created. Just don't post those funds until a project came along to use them. So, no.
Explain sinking
You want to
fund.
know whether you're making money off of it while
Oh,
it's sitting
jeez.
there.
Well, actually, that's in the resolution. There was a small interest, I believe, that is made on that was put back into the fund balance. That part is getting put back into fund balance from what I remember from the resolution.
Just curious. We can talk about it offline. I'm just curious.
Okay.
Should we do introductions?
Yeah.
Matt?
Yeah, my name is Matt Walder. I'm the Director of Planning and Development for Mill Creek Township. Thank you for having me today.
And I'm Kim Clear, Mill Creek Township Supervisor.
Joe Shember, Mayor of Erie.
Amy Francis, zoning for the city.
Erin Carey, neighborhood planner for the city.
Curtis Jones, director with the Erie Regional Chamber and Growth Partnership.
Michael Keys, Erie City Council.
And he's chair of our Economic Development Committee. Chuck Nelson, Erie City Council, president of the council.
Sorry, Dave Forrest, planning director. So Curtis kind of connected me and Matt and Kim at a previous meeting to talk about your initiative for 8th Street. And I thought it would be a good idea to bring us together so that we could discuss how we might kind of coordinate with the things that you're planning on 8th Street so that we could have a greater impact that would benefit both the city and the township. So they're here today to discuss their vision and talk about how we might be able to work together. So I'm going to leave it to you folks.
Okay, great.
I think really quickly, if I could preface, if that's okay, Matt. Matt has been working on the Presque Isle Gateway project since 2016, yes. and their comprehensive plan. And I have been, when I was on council, I've been watching probably more closely what was going on in the city of Erie, just because of a lot of the things that were coming to us on council. So I feel like I probably went into this knowing more about the city and the plans and the future of what you have going on down at the Bayfront, and then also with the downtown development. So I think that when I started learning more about this project, it just made sense to me that we needed to not act in isolation, but to somehow create a corridor between the Bayfront and our 8th Street Presque Isle Gateway, but really Presque Isle, because when we're looking at visitors or we're looking at our residents, having just the one thing to do isn't going to keep anybody here. That's where the brain drain is going to come in, and they're going to continue to leave. But if they have if they have more time to spend here, we can keep visitors longer, to spend more of their more of what they have, or if we can keep people here or have more people come to Erie to invest. I think that we give them more reason when we have both of our areas that we might be able to connect. And I think that that's, kind of where we're coming from. So when you see the history of the project and the evolution that it has taken, looking at branding ourselves somehow together, at least we can lead each other to each other's stuff, right? And say, here's a flag, follow the flags. Right. And we keep them here, so. All right, Matt.
Okay. All right, well, Kim kind of jumped forward to the end of the
What?
presentation, but I'll still go through and set the stage and the
Crap.
history of kind of how we got here, if you'll indulge me. And I do have the presentation up on the screen there, and you do have copies in front of you. I'm going to start with, going back in history to a presentation that was given between the City of Erie, the Erie County Department of Planning, PennDOT, and Mill Creek Township. We were asked to give a presentation by Representative Ryan Bizzarro to the House Democratic Policy Committee, and that happened in March of 2018. And so what I'm going to share here are just a few slides from that presentation, some that were put together by the city. Then it was Kathy Rosdick and myself, and this just kind of sets the stage of how we got to this point. And so first slide is just Kathy shared about the Bayfront Parkway feasibility study and the work that had gone into that and the public input that had gone into creating the vision of the Bayfront. And then she moved on to the areas of focus that came out of Erie Refocused. And she really, highlighted that you had one, the Bayfront development down at the dock. Perry Square was another focus area. And then you had 12th Street corridor. And then highlighting each of the different corridors, the Bayfront Parkway indicates 6th Street, 8th Street, and 12th Street as important corridors for the city of Erie in their planning process. And then you have a regional view of the area from Presque Isle through Dobbins Landing and a little bit past. And when you place the city's priority corridors and areas, this is what it looks like. So moving on to the township, at that time we had just been given a study that was conducted by the state, by the Commonwealth, through both the DCNR and PennDOT, and it was a concept study for multimodal improvements to Presque Isle State Park. And this is one of the exhibits from their study, just indicating different ways that the park could be accessed in the future, encouraging ferry, potential ferry and boat access, and then improving the land access, which, as we all know, currently is Mill Creek Township. And you see there in the inset there, it just kind of details a little closer some of the things that they proposed for the township, including pedestrian and bike facilities that would connect the existing multimodal trail up to and as far as West 8th Street.
Hey, Matt?
Yes.
Do you have two more of the handouts?
Oh, absolutely.
I want to give it to
Yeah.
out there so they
Yeah.
have to look at it.
Thank you.
She memorized.
Yeah. And so at the time that this study came about in early 2018, as Kim mentioned, we had begun our comprehensive planning process in 2016. We were just getting close. We had already had a series of half a dozen public meetings. We were getting close to the final draft of our plan and then putting it forward to the public. And so we incorporated a lot of the concepts from the study that the Commonwealth provided us into our comprehensive plan. Our comprehensive plan at the time had, focus on the following areas. Obviously, Peninsula Drive being a very important area just because of the number of tourists that are involved. We had 8th Street as one of our focus areas. And then, it was highlighted the entrance to Presque Isle is important, West 8th Street is important, and then we also indicated that for us, the area at Peninsula and West 26th Street where the vacant Kmart Plaza is important. And that's just highlighted on this map by, a inset from our comprehensive plan. So really, if you look between the city and Mill Creek Township, we came up with 3 coordinated priority areas where we, would intersect. And that would be on West 8th Street corridor, the West 12th Street corridor, and then the Presque Isle to Bayfront connection, like Kim just mentioned. And so going back to that regional view, you see the city's priority areas and corridors there. And then if you add in Mill Creek Township's priority areas and corridors, you see how they connect very well.
Why isn't 6th Street one of the, that seems to get used a lot.
And we will discuss that. 6th Street we have identified, and I'll get to it in one of our slides, more as a residential street and as a bike corridor to connect to the city's active transportation bike corridor on 6th Street. We do think that's a vital connection with the city, but we're looking, for that to be more bicycle and pedestrian oriented.
There are a lot of cars on 6th Street too. I could take. 'Cause
Sure.
I'm on that a lot.
Yep.
And there's no lights from most of the way Peninsula Drive,
Yeah.
from well inside the city
Oh, right.
all the way.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, Cascade may be the first light because you go around Frontier Park and out 6th Street. I mean, there's a couple stop signs, but no
That's
traffic
that's
signals.
correct,
Yep.
yes.
So as I mentioned, in 2018, in August of that year, the township did adopt its comprehensive plan titled Embrace Mill Creek. And we developed 5 focus areas for the comprehensive plan, with creating a gateway to Presque Isle District as being the first among the equals. Also providing, positioning commercial corridors for adaptation and redevelopment was another focus area. In the focus area for the gateway plan, the very first step, implementation step, was recommended to create a detailed gateway plan specifically for the district around the park. And so the township did undertake that beginning in late 2020, early 21, and in May of 2022, we developed the Presque Isle Gateway District Plan. Just a little background on the plan. The plan does mention, as part of its context and you know, the background documents that were studied in its creation, it included work that the city of Erie was engaging in, its active Erie transportation plan, and the West 8th Street improvements that at the time were still in the planning stages, but we know are now currently complete. This is an overall map of the district that shows the Gateway District, showing kind of what the township is thinking. And Mr. Mayor, this is kind of where we'll touch on your thoughts. Starting with West 6th Street, we see that as more a residential, we call it a bike boulevard to connect to the city of Erie, you know, into Frontier Park, and with the city's active transportation plan. I was, you know, pleased to serve as a stakeholder for that and work with the city as the plan was developed, and felt that 6th Street, just because of although it does have a lot of traffic, the lower stress was a perfect connection for the city and for parts of Mill Creek to Presque Isle State Park, especially in the future if we can have that completion of the trail and bring it up at least as far as 6th Street. Moving on south to West 8th Street, we've kind of identified that as what we're going for is a Main Street feel on our portion of West 8th Street, at least between Peninsula Drive and Pittsburgh Avenue. Next south is 12th Street, which again is a place where we intersect, you know, our corridor intersects with the city. We took a hard look at that and realized that the way it's developed, it's already fairly auto-oriented, and it probably isn't going to be able to be changed much. We just have, you know, some thoughts about aesthetic improvements, planting trees, and kind of softening it a little, but at 5 lanes and carrying that much traffic, it's difficult to do much with. And then lastly, you have obviously Peninsula Drive, which is the you know, gateway out onto the park itself. Definitely would like to do aesthetic improvements there, bicycle and pedestrian improvements as well. And then next, you'll see just kind of a concept from the plan. It's our vision for what we'd like to see our section of West 8th Street look like. We've kind of reinforced this with the new zoning code that we adopted last year. We'd like to see new buildings brought up forward close to the street. We'd like to prioritize pedestrians and kind of deprioritize automobiles. We'd like to provide street amenities such as outdoor dining along the sidewalk, and then move parking to the rear so that, you know, again, it isn't the autofocus, it's more focused on a walkable, connected corridor, very similar to the work that the city completed. So in our Gateway Master Plan, we do have Gateway Plan, we have a master plan for West 8th Street. And here, this example or this slide just shows 3 separate cross sections that we have for that section of West 8th. We have different right-of-way widths in there. So in the east and west section, we would like to see you know, a 3-lane road with a corridor, or I'm sorry, with a strip for street trees, a tree lawn, and then sidewalks. We do have a little more space. We've got a 70-foot right-of-way in the center of the corridor in the area where the Colony Plaza exists. We do envision some sort of on-street parking. We've proposed back in on-street like we have here at Perry Square. And the intent with that is just to replace as many of the spaces that will be disrupted at the Colony Plaza as possible, because currently the plaza is occupying quite a bit of the right-of-way for their private parking. So we will be affecting them, and we wanted to return some parking to them. And again, this was all in full cooperation with the plaza ownership itself. And this is just one example of the plan view of the what the West 8th Street would look like. This is the section closest right adjacent to the city of Erie. On the far right is Pittsburgh Avenue. Shows the area near the West Erie Plaza. You'll see that the 3-lane configuration I mentioned with the street trees and the sidewalks. We would like to and are intending to move that traffic signal that is at the entrance to the West Erie Plaza, maybe 200 feet from
the other one.
Pittsburgh Avenue. Yes, and move it another 800 feet further to the west to the main plaza entrance. That's a desire also of the plaza developers, VCG. And another thing you'll notice in this rendering, all the buildings marked with the 5 in a circle, those are proposed, buildings that do not exist, but where they could potentially be built according to our new zoning regulations. And we have had conversations with VCG, the plaza owners, and they are excited about this plan, and this is how they intend to move forward, at least with that section. And then here is just an artist's rendering of what that new intersection could look like with the main West Erie Plaza driveway. The white buildings are new infill buildings that would be built out at the street with proposed dining. And then you can see the amenities that I mentioned as well. And then lastly, and what's been the topic of conversation for most of the day, we have identified this key development area that would start at the western end, and our idea is, we do have so much traffic that goes up and down Peninsula Drive heading to the park. And we would like a way, as Kim said, to draw those people in, to give them something else to go to so they're not just flying out Peninsula Drive and going to I-90 and moving on their way. That they get drawn in, they come down 8th Street, they hopefully find things in the township, they continue on down 8th to businesses in the city, and then onto the Bayfront Parkway and to the Bayfront. We think that's a natural connection and corridor there. So I'll just update, so far our progress to date. We were awarded, thankfully, thankful to the governor and the legislators, $3.5 million in RACP funds to bring about the streetscape and some of the acquisitions that we worked on yesterday. We did establish a Mill Creek Township General Authority in October of last year to help assist us in financing and funding these acquisitions and this development. We are currently, as I mentioned, focusing our redevelopment efforts at West 8th and Peninsula Drive. The General Authority signed agreements to purchase 5 properties yesterday, as I'm sure you're aware. We did also sign an agreement with the Erie County Land Bank, who has approved $1 million in demolition funding over the next 4 years for these sites that we have under contract. We are currently working with PennDOT to take over ownership of West 8th Street. It's currently owned, maintained, plowed by PennDOT. Doing so has a couple of benefits for us. First of all, we get kind of out from under the state's regulations as far as development. We can kind of control more of how it develops because we don't have them as someone that has to approve everything. And secondly, they do provide municipalities with turnback funds for the road to be paved and improved before they turn it over, because then it will become the municipality's responsibility thereout. So that's kind of the kind of the carrot that they give you to accept a road from them, and so we're going to take advantage of that and use that funding to do a lot of the street improvements that we need. And then finally, we're working right now to issue a request for proposals for engineering firms to provide the engineering design for all the public improvements from Pittsburgh to Peninsula. And so I'll move on to the next slide. I don't know, Kim, if you want to take over from here or if you'd like me to, but this is where we really see an opportunity for future cooperation between the city and the township. And if you want me to just run through it?
Go
and then
for
you can
it.
speak.
Yes,
Okay.
you're doing so well.
Yeah.
You're used to this. You've been
That's
doing
all
it for
right.
so long.
Like, Kim mentioned it at the outset, the most logical vehicular connection between the Bayfront and Presque Isle State Park is the Bayfront Parkway to West 8th Street onto Peninsula Drive. The city has obviously completed their transformation of their section from, from Green Garden to Pittsburgh, but the area from the Bayfront Parkway contains Frontier Park, and I think it's looking very good. as we are working on our project and improving that, what we propose is that we try and work together to come up with a strategy to market this corridor, to create a brand for it, to market it, and as Kim mentioned, both for residents, to use on a regular basis, as well as for visitors, make it a destination. If they're visiting the Bayfront, let them know that they can get to the state park fairly easily, and vice versa, that they can get to Erie's Bayfront when they're visiting the state park. We feel that municipalities are stronger when they work together and they cooperate, and also when we bring in other partners. And so we've just identified a few potential partners. There's ECRA for potential funding grants. Working with EMTA, it's part of the Commonwealth study that maybe there's a connection, even a park and ride potentially near the West Erie Plaza for people going to Presque Isle State Park in the city, kind of a transfer point. Obviously, we have Visit Erie that we could work with to accomplish this, and then the Regional Chamber and Growth Partnership. So that's what we were here today to talk to you about and discuss. And Kim, I don't know if you want to add anything further, or?
No, I think when I met with Curtis, a few months ago, I think it was, and I was talking to him about, he was asking what could he do to help our, this vision that we have, and I wanted to meet the new planning director. So you were a part of the conversation. And so he made that happen, and so Matt and I were able to meet with him, and I know that a lot of your future projects probably kind of hinge on, what the, the mayor and the council, and, as far as funding goes, I know that that's always the first question, and I've already been talking with EGRA about some streetscaping grant availability. And so I know that there is potential there. We actually have just hired a communications coordinator who is working on our rebranding. We're going to be launching a whole new brand in a few months here, or the new Milk Creek. Just kidding. Like the new Coke. Remember the new Coke? What did you say?
Kim's Milk.
Oh, I thought you said something else. I'll tell you what I thought you said later. It had something to do with it. I'll tell you later. Yeah, no, it's not my Milk Creek. I think it's the Milk Creek, that I think all of my students want to live in. It's just, what do they see for the future? It's a place to stay and want to raise your family. And selfishly want my children to decide to stay. But anyway, so I do think that we could do this. I think we could do something together, and I think we can make this affordable for both of us. And I think that we'd have a lot of buy-in from the county, from all of the different organizations. I think that this is selling Erie in itself. So, but if we could work together to go and get some of this funding and to work on this, I do think we would have more leverage if we were to go in on this together. So, and I don't know, what does the planning department in Erie think?
This is a bad idea, Kim, and I'm just joking. No, well,
None of my ideas are bad. Ask my husband.
No, for me, I don't even know that we need to, we don't need to necessarily concern ourselves with getting money right away, because there are things we can do that won't necessarily cost money. Like, we can make sure that we coordinate on zoning and design guidelines and things like that, which will really shape private development. So that's like a no-brainer. I mean, we should be coordinating that type of thing like right now, and then we can worry about seeking funds for physical public improvements as we go along. But I think it's just a good idea to work on this so we have a unified corridor.
Yeah.
If I may jump in for a quick moment, I think the A Street corridor is a great opportunity because of the work the city has been and continues to do, improving what Mill Creek is looking to do and will continue to do, it has been doing on A Street. It's already rolling, right? So we build momentum of collaboration, and then 12th Street turns into something really easy to do together, right? I know you shared about your the Mill Creek perspective on 8th Street and or 12th Street, your side of it is pretty like 79 connected. It's kind of a conduit, but just on the other side of that is Green Garden, which is heavy Erie, obviously, and it's a gateway, a different gateway into the city that, to be quite honest, all of us want to improve on. And so the connectivity, again, it becomes easy to work together going across 12th Street into Mill Creek and in the city. And then to the mayor's point about 6th Street, you know, maybe there's traffic, and, you know, a traffic engineer can look at if there's a lot of car or vehicle heavy traffic there, but we want to make it more pedestrian and bike friendly. That's another conversation that we have, and getting, you know, is it Leanne Parmenter still here?
Yes.
Right? She was part-time when I was here, now she's long full-time, but so, you know, those are things that we can do together, and that doesn't cost money. It just costs collaboration. And you know, so I think there's a lot that could come from this. This is a low-lying fruit, in my opinion, because you all, ironically, in the paper today, we find out what we find out about acquisition. The city's already been doing and continuing, so 8th Street is easy, I think. It makes sense because everybody's focused there. We have visions about 6th and 12th and 26, but 8th Street is a
Feels
tangible
like it's
thing right now.
established already.
Yeah,
as
it's
to
been,
what
yeah.
It just needs improved upon.
Yeah, so.
And we have C1 going straight across, so it's all local commercial, shouldn't be as any zoning issues. Sounds very similar to Colonial Plaza area, so. Now 12th Street, we have some other things to talk about on 12th Street, because we've had a number of zoning hearing appeals to get different uses in, so that's something Aaron and Jake and I have been kind of discussing, so. Of course, it goes with all the other plans.
Yeah, and we'll be a part of the transportation and land use plan for West 12th Street that the city has funding for.
That again?
The city has funds through the MPO to start a West 12th Street corridor land use and transportation plan. And that'll be kicking off the next couple months.
Any thoughts, guys?
It's very exciting to me. Look forward to working with Mill Creek and, you know, really accomplishing a lot here. Probably without spending a lot of money, as a couple people have said already too, but well worth it.
I think we need to make sure that on our side that we're doing things to calm it. You know, where you're talking about in the development of 8th up to Pittsburgh, and then the way you describe that it's a natural corridor into the Bayfront and a traffic dump. One of the games I've been playing for the last year is keeping track of our homicides versus our pedestrian deaths. We had a man die on 8th Street last year, the 1900 block, 79-year-old pedestrian. So when I hear of increasing a volume on that and viewing this stretch of our, you know, as you're talking about 6th Street with where the lights are, we don't have a light basically, you know, in that whole stretch. It's a pretty, we fly, you know, as a community, we fly down 8th Street in that portion of Erie City.
I go to speed limit. I'm on the walk.
He's the one who's flying.
Yeah,
Self-disclosure.
I just heard Chuck breaks the speed limit.
yeah.
That's all I heard.
I'm not denying breaking rules. So, you know, I mean, that's an area where I'm concerned. So if they're talking about how to make this, and when you see the beautiful pictures that they have of how to slow it down, how to make it more
Yeah.
pedestrian friendly, if we then, if that then creates their volume and it leads to us being the stretch of very residential, I mean, that's
There's a lot of residential
they are
stuff in there.
right there.
Yeah.
So I mean, this, you know, you get those guys that are living right, you know, just right there at that house, and then they cross the street to get a jug of milk from Country Fair on a quick walk, and that's so I want to make sure that we have the you know, when we're picturing where this is, I don't want to miss the gaps that have
Yeah.
been a danger for our constituents recently. And we've got plenty in mind for 8th Street further in. You know, I live on 9th Street. It's, you know, so I'm always watching 8th Street, and we've got the restore plans with the Our West Bayfront. So I mean,
Right in with the.
yeah. So I mean, it's just that little gap in the middle that I'm looking at that you know, that I'm thinking like, well, we got to make sure that one spot is not, you know, neglected as a 25-mile-an-hour thoroughway. I never pay attention what the limits are. You go there. So is it 25?
It's done.
So what is that gap you're referring to, Chuck?
From Pittsburgh to the Bayfront, It's a
Okay,
25
okay.
mile an hour speed
Yeah,
limit.
yeah.
It's zoned C1, but right at the edge of it is residential.
Absolutely.
So it's a lot of
Yeah.
like little houses that
Right across the street from the plazas and
Right.
Yeah.
the stores,
Yeah.
so they're
absolutely.
walking over to Country Fair,
Yeah.
and you know, we had
Multifamily,
a 79-year-old
yeah.
resident. One of the neighbors was now I'm getting all these requests to rename streets after people and stuff. So one of our neighbors was asking, like, hey, I know you have a passion about pedestrian safety. Here's an example. What do you think? And I, so. But so, anyways, that's a little stretch where
Yeah.
I want to make sure that we're not neglecting it as they're developing
Right.
to make sure there are.
That was the first thing I looked at, was the setback. What's the setback? As you talked about being real close to, and we have, of course, I looked at it and completely forgot. C1, 15 foot. So what's an average sidewalk over there? 4 foot wide? Is that right? I'm not the
Our
engineering
minimum's
department,
5.
sorry.
Yeah.
5?
Yeah.
So, you have some room still to bring more business into, like you were talking to develop right into there.
Amy, is that a setback line or a build to line?
It's a front yard setback.
So they could exceed that if they wanted, they just couldn't.
Oh, yes,
Okay.
absolutely, absolutely.
One of the things we did in our area of 8th Street is added a build to line. So they have to build 10 feet off the right of way. They could push it back a little further if they dedicate that area for public amenities like dining or, but we wanted to force people to come up closer to the road and not give them, because right now, they have the option of going
Right.
as far back as they want.
I'm really glad that you brought up the pedestrian aspect, though, because, one of the things that I would like to see in Mill Creek is more availability to walk, and to walk to places rather than having to drive there. And all of those neighborhoods down there are so close. And I want them to walk to go get milk, I used to walk with my grandmother to Paul Bunyan to go get milk, and those are the things I would like to bring to our residents as well. So I do want to create the opportunities for walkability, to have more pedestrian traffic.
And I will say, to your point, when we did our gateway plan and we put it out, for the public for comments, and we showed how 8th Street has the cross-section that I showed you with the curbs, and it was, we got frequently comments about, well, you can't do that because, the cars go too fast, and the idea is to try and bring that, the vision in and tighten it up so that they have to go slow. And, that was another complaint we got about the back-end parking. They can't do that because of the cars. And we want to try and create that friction there to kind of slow traffic as well.
Ask
So,
Waterford how that worked out. They're on that busy stretch of Waterford. They did the same thing. It slows that whole intersection right down. And there's a school zone over there, so be careful.
Yeah.
And like my daughter goes to school on 8th Street. She's
Right.
at Strong Vincent. And like our school zone stops before you even get to the first intersection. You're driving west out of the city, and the school zone doesn't start till you're on the block of Strong Vincent. First intersection is outside the school zone. Like we've
It's tricky over there, yeah.
yeah. There's a lot of there's a lot that makes me cringe on that. And the thing is, in stats of Erie County,
Sure.
you're still more likely to die by a car hitting you than a bullet. I mean, that's the struggles right now. So if we're breezing past that, that's and so our little stretch of 8th Street that they referred to, I want to make sure that we're calming that.
And it doesn't make sense because of what they're planning up until Pittsburgh on 8th to figure out how do we, again, synergize, because that's maybe unplanned for on some level from the city side, that stretch you're referring to. I mean, there's some streetscape work that's been done there, but maybe there's a continuation of crossing Pittsburgh Avenue. Like, great ideas don't have to stop at Pittsburgh Avenue to go on east or west, right? And so how do we, have some uniformity? What does that look like? I know we've got like the Stairways building right there, and you've got some restaurants and the building or apartment complexes there. I used to live on 6th in Pittsburgh, so I'm very familiar with the area as well. But since it is kind of a best practice, or well, I won't say best practice, but a really good practice that you're planning to do, is it rocket science for us not to just kind of work together and expand that out, like, right? Just because it's the Mill Creek, it's really the 8th Street corridor. And I don't want to sound overly flighty about it, but you know, when I was a city councilman sitting over there for a couple of years, one of the things that I would legitimately say is that the air we breathe doesn't shift from one side of Pittsburgh to the other, or
Take
Bird
up the
Drive,
line on the map.
or East or
What do you
West
got?
Grandview.
Yeah.
Like, those are things that are legitimate, and the same people traverse across seamlessly. So can we work together to maybe provide that seamless experience, you know? Again, I don't want to over-talk it or sound preachy about it, but I just think that this is an opportunity because this is already happening.
Yeah.
Both sides,
Yeah.
both municipalities are doing work on the same strip.
Yeah.
So since we're already working, let's work together.
I have a question. So, we are, just went through a PennDOT project on West 8th Street, and most of the retail and commercial businesses are longtime businesses along the Erie stretch of that corridor. So it would seem that it would have limited ability to change some of those things along that stretch between, saying, the Green Garden and the Pittsburgh. And so I'm just wondering what your ideals were, if there was any,
Who you're referring the question to?
whoever wants to take it.
Talking about the Erie side of Pittsburgh Avenue?
Yes, going back towards to.
That's transformed now. I don't know if you wrote on it much before or after, but it's totally different. There's street lighting that used to be there, there's trees up that didn't used to be there. And people used to hate to ride over that street because it was had so many potholes and things. Now it's perfectly smooth. We've got better turning lanes than we did before.
Right, that's what I was referring to, the work that had already been done. But I was also referring to how they plan on building out their commercial districts going forward.
What's the incentive to redo 8th Street into more of a commercial zone? Is that what you're kind of looking for?
Well, no, I was just asking about, okay, like, you have a lot of long-standing businesses here. They're plugging in new places. There's a difference when they say, okay, there's gonna be a 10-foot setback, where when you're putting in new development, you can put in a 10-foot setback, but when you have existing buildings or
They're just
that,
all non-conforming regardless then, and we don't change them until we get a new change to that property, then they have to conform.
Right, I think I can answer your question. Some things are not gonna change in the short run.
Right.
But what we can do is put in place zoning and design guidelines so that when new development does come in, it'll have to conform with the new standards, and it'll be part of this unified vision of 8th Street. So no one's gonna kick any of those existing long-standing businesses out, but when there comes a time where someone wants to redevelop something, it'll have to conform with the new standard. And I think the standard that I think, you know, Kim and Matt are describing is more of like a Main Street standard with 0 setbacks, parking in the rear or the side, and not so much an automotive district, which is what both of us have right now. Most of the parking is in the front.
correct.
I think the design standards are really critical when we do these plans. If you want to keep it looking the same in that street, it's something I've noticed that we don't have a whole lot of until now. Aaron's working on some of those things. So that's something that I think we should incorporate in all of our plans. If you want to make it look a lot alike, we need to put that in place so that when we do a zoning review, we can check all of that stuff off for you.
Yeah.
So just a suggestion from our end is we really need to see some of that in a plan and maybe put in an ordinance that we have to follow some of that stuff, because that makes the property owner follow as well.
Yeah, and Councilman, you know, I guess, not counting the actions that we just took yesterday in that area near Peninsula Drive, but for the most part, our intention is just what David said, that we set the standard now, and then as new things come in, stuff will slowly shift. It's going to have to happen over a period of years. And then the hope is, just as new development comes, it spurs other development, and they all start falling in. But it will take a long time.
That's pretty much the way it always ends up with a zoning, is once it changes, you are always gonna have something that doesn't fit in that zoning anymore. The goal is, as we rehab and move forward, it all conforms into that. Maybe it changes again by the time we get through them all, but kind of that non-conforming issue we will always have.
So I guess, we just like, staff, unless there's some objection, we'd just like to continue to work with the township and start, kind of cooperating across the lines in terms of these issues that we've been talking about. And we'll keep the committee and council and the mayor informed as we move forward.
Okay.
Anything I can do to help, I'm happy to do it.
Thank you.
Cooperate and work together.
If I need any arms twisted, I'll call.
Okay.
No, and I will, I'm gonna actually reach out. John Oliver is still at Visit Erie, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I was gonna reach out to him and Perry and I'll keep in contact with Curtis, of course, and from EMTA, I'll be reaching out there to Jeremy, so, and see what we can do to start kind of gathering, some funding. As far as, coming up with, a vision for, what we, and I don't mean just see, but what we want others to see, what our perception is may not be the perception of others, but I've learned a lot about this branding strategy from our communications coordinator, who knew a 23-year-old could teach me so much. But really there's a lot that goes into that messaging, and so I will continue to keep in touch with them and also get in touch with others. So I'll work on it. Networking stuff.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having us. And I didn't realize that it was going to come on the heels of our meeting yesterday. So, yeah, I am personally very excited about what we have at least started to invest in. Mill Creek has not invested in itself. Sorry, reinvested in itself. I think they have lived off of the housing boom of the, 70s, 80s, 90s. And we're also paying the price for some of the neglect prior to Matt, of course, in stormwater, which is something that we are which of course we do have plans for meeting the needs of that for our residents. So, because that's an issue that unfortunately was created with mass development. But
I'd like to give everyone a pen if you'd like one. You don't have to take one. They light up.
I love Joe Schember pens.
I collect them.
The original.
You got 2018 pen, 2019.
You were standing over there, passing it to folks.
These have my name on it, and then they say, during 2023, let's bring more jobs and more people to here. So you can take one.
Oh, I love it. Yes. Thank you.
My favorite color. This is my first one.